when I was discussing this general topic with some of our speakers, one of the brothers, he mentioned that one of the tafsirs of amarna mutrafiha. Mutrafin are people of luxury. Yani people who are living at a high level of comfort. And the verb amara, one of its meanings is to increase. So there is a tafsir that says that when Allah intends to destroy a city or a village, that He increases the number of it, people living in luxury. Although that was not the preferred tafsir because of some linguistic issues and etc. I won't go into that, but just in passing, that's kind of an interesting point. But the dominant tafsir is that Allah He sends commands to those people through their prophets, and then the people who are living in luxury, the elite, they disobey. They defiantly disobey. And when that happens, then usually they have the means to swerve public opinion to go along with them, and so they all become deserving of punishment. And there's 2 verses in the Quran that mention opening the doors. The one verse says, وَلَوْ أَنَّ أَهْلَ الْقُرَىٰ آمَنُوا وَاتَّقَوْا لَفَتَحْنَا عَلَيْهِمْ بَرَكَاتٍ مِّنَ السَّمَاءِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَلَكِنْ كَذَّبُوا فَأَخَذْنَاهُمْ بِمَا كَانُوا يَكْسِبُونَ. If only the people of the cities had believed and feared Allah, we would have opened for them the blessings from the heavens and the earth. But they denied the messengers, so we seized them for what they were earning. Earning meaning what they did. The opening of the barakat, barakah is something when a little goes a long way. There's another verse that mentions opening the doors of everything. فَلَمَّا نَسُوا مَا ذُكِّرُوا بِهِ فَتَحْنَا عَلَيْهِمْ أَبْوَابَ كُلِّ شَيْءٍ حَتَّى إِذَا فَرِحُوا بِمَا أُوتُوا أَخَذْنَاهُمْ بَغْتَةً فَإِذَا هُمْ مُبْلِسُونَ. So when they forgot that with which they had been reminded, we opened to them the doors of everything, until when they rejoiced in that which they had been given, we seized them suddenly, and they were then in despair. So there's a difference between having the doors of barakah open, which is related to iman and taqwa, and the doors of everything. And when I was living in Dubai, that's what I saw. The doors of everything. It's just kathra. Kathratul khabith. It's there in all quantities. So the good and the bad, it's all a blend. And the Prophet ﷺ, he said, I don't fear for you. He said, the thing I fear most for you is that the bounties of the earth be open for you. And the people said, can good bring evil? Because the word for good in Arabic, khair, also means things, wealth. So they said, can good bring evil? He said, no, good does not bring evil. But is it really good, meaning wealth? Is it really good? Is it really good? And he gave the example of a cow that when it feeds on the vegetation that's growing right next to the stream, if the shepherd doesn't watch it, it will eat so much that its stomach will expand with the gases of digestion until the stomach bursts. Whereas if that animal is grazing on, stuff that's kind of dry and not that tasty, it only eats enough to get by, and it survives. So I don't have the answers to these questions, but these are questions that we need to deal with, we need to confront. And I don't see the Muslims dealing with them. I see non-Muslims talking about it, and I don't see them coming up with any solutions. But I don't even see the Muslims really talking about it. So may Allah guide us to wake up and become participants in the world in which we live, and to help and put the brakes on the runaway train. Wassalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Ladies and gentlemen, at this time we'll open the floor for questions and answers. There are some guidelines which must be followed, and I'll go over them briefly for you before we begin. We're going to be asking questions on the subject of sustainability of civilization. And in order to do that, in the limited time available, it's necessary for you to stay to that topic. Questions not relevant to the topic, including any general questions on religion, will not be allowed. Kindly state your question briefly and be to the point, and try to refrain from making statements. Only one question at a time may be asked. If you have a second question, please go to the rear of the queue and wait your turn. There are 3 mics which have been positioned around the auditorium for you to ask questions. There's one in the front, one in the rear for the brothers, and one in the sister sections. We prefer and give preference to non-Muslims, so if there are any non-Muslims, brothers or sisters, who have questions for our speaker today, please make yourself known to the volunteers and they will assist you in getting to the mic. If you are shy and do not wish to ask a question on the microphone, you may write the question down and give it to one of our volunteers, but written questions will be given second preference. The order of the procession will normally go from this mic to this mic and then over to the sister section. So be ready when you're queued. At this time, inshallah, I would like to welcome back to the microphone Sheikh Riaz Ansary. And I ask those people asking questions to please kindly state your name and profession before stating your question. So sir, we'll begin with you, inshallah. What's your question?
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Abdul Qayyum. I'm a student of corporate management. You talked about the economic change that should have come in Islam and whether it will ever come or not. Now, apparently we have a written document which is the Al-Furqan, which is the reference document which we have. Now, if we read that in light of the new knowledge which we acquire, maybe you would agree that yes, we might see new light through it. Now, the cornerstone for economics in Islam is spend. The entire basis is you spend, not save, unlike the other economy, like the Indian economy is based on saving. What is your per capita saving? But in Islam, it is spend. You have to spend out. One is the spend, second is the riba. Now, if you see both of these and read them, and are we assuming what we have assumed long back to be the same now? Example again, when I ask people, has riba been defined in Quran? Generally, I get a reply, no. If riba is such an important thing in our religion, do you think Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who has said that I have given a complete message, has not defined riba? Why don't we look into our book and see what is the definition he meant? Now, the first verse on riba that was revealed is in Surah Rum, verse number 39. Now, that's one place where riba has been referred as not the riba, it's riba and XYZ, that is the explanation is going on. Subsequent verses on riba is referred to as al-riba, that is the riba. So whenever if I'm talking in my essay, if I'm talking about XYZ, I first referred what is that XYZ. Subsequently, I say that I'm referring to that particular thing. Similarly, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in the first verse, he has not used the riba, but he has defined that riba, that is 39. So if the definition is given there and subsequently he is referred to that, why don't we look into this very cornerstone of Islamic economics, riba, and see whether did Allah Ta'ala mean something else? And the cornerstone that the verse 39, if you can throw some light on that, it would be good.
Well, because of the shortness of time, I didn't get into riba. I mean, obviously, it has a major impact on human misery. I mean, that's why, I mean, this is pointed out by Hamza Yusuf that, when the Prophet ﷺ, he saw the people being punished in the hereafter for various crimes, various sins, that the person who had been a consumer of riba, he was swimming in a lake of blood.
Marriage is the cornerstone for a successful society. How can we maintain a successful marriage? Join us in this journey where we learn how to plan for it, execute it, maintain it, and end it according to Islam.
Grasp the unique philosophy of Islam to make marriages successful in Marriage and Divorce. Tonight at 8:30 p.m. and repeat telecast at 8:30 a.m. India on Peace TV. Thursdays provide.
In Britain, we are facing one big problem, that are you Muslim or British?
The space to talk.
In India, back home, they ask, are you a Muslim first or Indian first? And we Muslims should know how to reply, how to turn the tables over.
The place to knock.
Why Trinity cannot be regarded in that sense, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit?
The opportunity to ask.
But even if we agree that what the Christians say, that he was crucified, so if Jesus Christ, peace be upon him, died for 3 days, who controlled the world? That means even God died?
The freedom to unmask.
So there are various ways which we can prove the argument to be wrong.
Let's meet Dr. Zakir every Thursday at 6:30 p.m. and repeat telecast at 9:30 a.m. India on Peace TV. Zain Bhika and Daud Wansby Ali.
Hey kids, time is very precious.
This life is a gift from Allah.
Utilize this gift for here and hereafter.
Enjoy this gift in the light of the Quran and Hadith.
Enjoy Islam with us, Zain and Dawood.
Enjoying Islam with Zain and Daud, next on Peace TV.
Well, because of the shortness of time, I didn't get into riba. I mean, obviously, it has a major impact on human misery. I mean, that's why, I mean, this is pointed out by Hamza Yusuf that, when the Prophet ﷺ, he saw the people being punished in the hereafter for various crimes, various sins, that the person who had been a consumer of riba, he was swimming in a lake of blood. And he made the connection that's because of the role of riba in financing wars, especially in the modern era. Those who loan money to those rulers who make war, they earn what they call windfall profits. And the other aspect of riba that has an incredible role in oppressing the poor, this was a methodology that was developed in the late 1800s, where Western institutions and their political backers, they would go to the elite of a developing country and they would say, why don't you take a loan for your country? And the elite would borrow the money from the bank on interest, and then the people of the country are then saddled with those debts. And with regard to the type of development that the IMF and the World Bank favors, it's these mega projects. So they're going to build this huge something, a dam or whatever, and they have to move all of the subsistence people who are living in that area off the land. They now become displaced people without land. They have to start looking for someone to hire them in order to survive, and they make the wages that are available to them usually are less than a living wage. And then to build those mega projects, they call in these international construction firms. They earn the money. So the money is loaned to these third world economies. it immediately leaves again back to developed economies, and in the meantime, then the actual money itself has to be repaid to those banks at interest. So it's a major instrument for inflicting and maintaining misery on the world's poor. As far as definition of riba, I think it's pretty clear. I mean, based on the basic issue with understanding the Quran is understanding the Arabic language and understanding the meanings of words as they were understood at the time of the revelation. So, there were two types of riba. There's the riba, which is of barter, and that is clearly explained by the Prophet ﷺ, and the riba nasiya, which is the riba of debts, delayed repayment for loans. And the Prophet ﷺ made it clear that 1 dirham of that type of riba is worse than committing incest with your mother. As far as spending and saving, I wouldn't entirely agree with you. I mean, to say that the Islamic economy doesn't see saving as a part of the options. I mean, Yusuf alayhi salam, he interpreted that dream, which came from Allah to the king of his time, to mean the necessity of saving. And the idea that you cannot save anything, you have to spend it all, that was a minority position of Abu Dhar radiallahu anh, and the rest of the Sahaba disagreed with him on that. But there is the necessity of circulation of wealth. I mean, Allah mentioned the reason for these rules like the zakat and the distribution of the fay. كَيْ لَا يَكُونَ دُولَةً بَيْنَ الْأَغْنِيَاءِ مِنْكُمْ, in order that it should not simply become something that's circulating among the rich. You have to have top-down circulation. And if that doesn't happen, then society will just suffer tremendously. I mean, when you have a system that produces things and there aren't enough people with cash to buy those things, you're going to have crises. The corporations are going to have crises, because if you can't sell your product because the people don't have money to buy it, then you're going to crash.
Thank you for your question. For the questioners, please keep your questions brief and to the point. As you can see, the speakers are very well versed in the subjects at hand, and they'll understand what you're trying to get across. Please keep your questions brief.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Mohsin. My question is to you. Due to termination of pregnancy, many children are not born. Allah had already destined this. So is Allah or the parents response for the non-substance of this child?
Okay, if I understand what you're asking about abortion. Abortion is, according to the vast majority, nearly a consensus, not quite. Abortion is a sin. You're killing the child, which Allah intended to be born. Okay, there's no disagreement on the issue at all after the ruh is blown into the fetus. There is a minor disagreement about whether it's permissible to terminate a pregnancy before that. But the dominant position is that it's not, because you're now interfering with the biological growth, which, if left unhindered, will become the vessel for that ruh. And so it is a criminal, sinful act. There's a difference between abortion and contraception. I mean, the Catholic position is that contraception is prohibited. We as Muslims, we don't have that absolute prohibition of contraception. And that's ultimately, it's an issue that every couple, they have to decide that for themselves, whether they choose to space out their children or not. There are considerations like how much time and effort you have to give to your children, their education, etc. These are considerations that become motivating factors for people who are, they're in that middle class, developed strata of the world. People who are poor, it makes sense for them to have more children, because if you have a small farm and your children, they help you produce. They help you produce wealth. I mean, that was Mao Zedong's original position on the issue of population control. He said every mouth has two hands with it. So he was against population control in the early days. But the other issue for poor people is that when you have a society where there's absolutely no provision on a societal level for taking care of people when they're old and unable to take care of themselves, then of course the only recourse is to have children. And if you don't have children when you get old, I mean, that's you're sort of consigning yourself to a life of misery. So I mean, there are very compelling reasons why poor people want to have children.
Thank you for your question. I hope the answer was appreciated. Is there a question from the lady's side?
I am Mrs. Chaudhary, and I am a mother. Brother, as you said in your talk, in trying to cope with the needs of the growing population, food production has certainly increased, but it has happened at the cost of nutrition. There is so much of pesticides and other fluids that we inject into the food so that it grows faster, that it actually kills the nutrition. What can you say about this?
Well, I mean, I just read an item in the newspaper yesterday where they were testing the DNA of people in the Punjab, and there's been such a heavy runoff of fertilizers and pesticides into the groundwater in those areas that they said that the majority of people in those areas, their DNA has been damaged by these chemicals. So, and these kind of problems of production, I mean, it is possible. There are alternatives. When I was in college, in my second year of college, the program that I was studying was an organic farming program. And one of our teachers was a biologist whose specialty was in pest control using insects, what they call beneficial insects. And it's an area that research needs to be done on. I mean, now they have these, the technique that they're using is genetic engineering to produce plants that, they produce their own nitrogen, because they put in the gene from a bean plant, which does fix nitrogen, and plants that are resistant to this or that insect and stuff like that. I mean, again, a lot of what's going on in this, it reminds me of, there was when I was in high school, the next high school over, it was in a very wealthy area, and the kids who went there, their parents were all very well educated, and so it was considered a really kind of very, very good academic high school. And there was one student who was taking college preparatory chemistry, and so he learned how to do a lot of stuff in the lab. And NIH, the National Institutes of Health, their big library was in that area also. So he went to the library and he was studying how to make certain drugs. He liked to get high. So he went to the lab and he cooked up these designer drugs. And, he's a very, very bright teenager. So he figured out how to do all that stuff, and he cooked up the designer drug, and he took it himself. And unfortunately, he wasn't that expert in dealing with that, so he did it a little bit too much. So the molecule that he was trying to produce, he produced something close to it, but not the same. And so when he ingested it, he ended up giving himself symptoms like Parkinson's disease. He basically damaged his nervous system irreparably. And when you look at, this whole attitude of technological fix, everything can be fixed with technology, just keep going in the same system. I mean, it's like those people are like that teenager. They're really smart, but they're not smart enough. And it's not just that they're injecting the drug into themselves, they're injecting the drug into the whole human race. We're strapped on